They say the moment truth reveals itself, time stands perfectly still. That night, inside the grand Okonkwo estate, with thunder rolling and police lights flashing, that moment arrived. The servant stood frozen as she walked past them, the woman they had seen every day for 30 years in a faded uniform. But now she was flanked by lawyers in expensive suits and officers who treated her with respect. The family stood at the top of the staircase, faces drained of color, mouths open in shock. Because the woman they had called just the maid for decades was about to be revealed as the true owner of everything they thought was theirs. Every chandelier, every marble floor, every piece of land, everything. Before we dive deeper into this remarkable story, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Her name was Madam Ijoma Nadi. For most of her life in that mansion, people simply called her EJ, or worse, they called her nothing at all. They looked through her as if she were invisible. But every secret has its beginning, and Ijoma's secret began long before she ever set foot in that grand estate in a small village where dust roads turned to mud when the rains came. Ijoma was born in a village called Umuoka. Her father was a farmer with hands permanently stained with soil, and her mother was a schoolteacher who taught children under the shade of a massive tree. Ijoma learned early that hard work and honesty were survival tools. Her mother used to say, "The truth might hurt today, but lies will destroy you tomorrow." While other children learned to bend rules, Ijoma spoke plainly and returned even the smallest borrowed items. The villagers called her Ijoma the Just, some with admiration, others with mockery. Her parents were not wealthy, but they managed. They had a small house and enough land to feed the family. Ijoma's dream was simple: to own a home where no hungry person would ever be turned away. She shared this dream with her mother one evening. Her mother smiled and said, "Dreams require sacrifice and patience. Sometimes they require you to walk through fire." Those words would echo forever, because less than a year later, fire came. A lamp tipped over during the dry Harmattan season. The flames spread impossibly fast. Her parents were trapped inside. Ijoma was 17 when she became an orphan, standing before the smoking ruins of everything she had known. The village elders discussed her fate as if she were not there. Some said she should marry quickly. Others said she should live with distant relatives. But Ijoma made a different choice. She packed the few things that survived: her mother's Bible, her father's broken wristwatch, and a photograph, wrapped them in cloth, and walked to the main road. She was going to the city where her aunt had moved years ago. The journey took 2 days. She slept one night at a roadside chapel, clutching her bundle. When she finally arrived, she learned her aunt had died 6 months earlier. The new tenants knew nothing about her and told her to try the church. At the church, Sister Mary listened to her story and made calls. Within a week, Ijoma had her first job as housemaid for the Okonkwo family. The pay was modest, but included a small room and 2 meals daily. Sister Mary warned her, "These are proud, wealthy people. They will test you. But if you work hard and keep your head down, you will survive." Survival. That was enough for now. The Okonkwo estate was unlike anything Ijoma had seen. 3 stories tall, brilliant white with columns, a long driveway lined with palms. Inside, polished marble floors reflected crystal chandeliers. Chief Okechukwu Okonkwo was in his early 60s, tall, broad-shouldered, with a commanding voice. He had made his fortune in real estate. His wife, Madame Adaeze, was elegant and cold, wearing expensive wrappers and gold even at home. Their 3 grown sons, Chike, Emeka, and Dubem, still lived there, waiting, always waiting for their inheritance. Ijoma quickly learned the hierarchy. Chief Okonkwo was rarely home. Madame Adaeze ran the house with an iron fist, criticizing every imperfection. The sons were spoiled men who had never worked, spending their time drinking and treating staff like they were subhuman. Ijoma cleaned, cooked, and served guests. The work was hard but bearable. What was unbearable was the constant humiliation. Madame Adizi would declare freshly dusted shelves filthy. The sons snapped fingers at her like she was a dog. Once, Chiki deliberately tripped her. Glasses shattered across the marble. Guests gasped. Madame Adizi shouted the cost would come from her pay. Cheek laughed. Through it all, Ijoma said nothing. She cleaned the glass. She apologized. She kept working. But here is what they did not see. Every night after everyone slept, Ijoma would sit in her small room and open her mother's Bible, reading by candlelight because the servants' electricity was unreliable. She prayed not for revenge or escape, but for strength and patience. She made a promise to her parents' memory. She would not let cruelty make her cruel. She would not let their contempt fill her with hatred. She would work with excellence not because they deserved it, but because she deserved to maintain her own standards. This quiet resolve became her armor. Other servants whispered among themselves. The cook once asked, "Why do you take it? Why don't you stand up for yourself?" Ijoma smiled softly. Standing up does not always look like fighting back. Sometimes it looks like standing firm. The cook did not understand but nodded anyway. Years passed. 3 became 5. 5 became 7. Ijoma became part of the mansion's landscape, as unremarkable as the paintings on the walls. But Chief Okonkwo was watching her, not inappropriately but with quiet attention. He noticed she never gossiped. He noticed that when his sons were rude, she responded with grace. He noticed she genuinely cared about her work quality, recleaning things even if no one else would know. One evening he heard singing from the hallway, Ijoma mopping the floor, singing an old hymn in Igbo. Her voice was beautiful, full of peace. He opened his study door and watched. When she noticed him, she stopped, startled. "I apologize, sir." "Please continue," he said gently. It was beautiful. She resumed mopping but did not sing again. Yet that moment stayed with him. Then came the night that changed everything. During rainy season, a massive storm hit. Power was out across the neighborhood. The family had just finished dinner when Chief Okonkwo suddenly clutched his chest and collapsed. Madame Adizi screamed. The sons panicked, useless. Someone shouted to call a doctor, but in the chaos and darkness, phones did not work. Precious minutes were wasted. Ijoma moved. She ran to the chief's side, checked his breathing, loosened his collar. Her mother had taught her basic first aid. Then she made a decision. She ran out into the storm. Rain came in sheets, wind howled, lightning split the sky. She ran barefoot for 15 minutes to a clinic on the main road, pounding on the door until the doctor opened. He refused at first, too dangerous, but Ijoma fell to her knees in the rain. "Please, a man is dying. Please." Something in her desperation moved him. He grabbed his bag, and they drove back through flooded streets. By the time they arrived, the chief had been unconscious for 30 minutes. His family thought he was dead. The doctor worked quickly. It was a heart attack, but not massive. With treatment, the chief would recover. When someone mentioned the maid had run into the storm to get help, Madame Adizi said nothing, but her eyes flickered to Ijoma, standing in the corner, soaking wet, shivering, silent. Chief Okonkwo stayed in the hospital 2 weeks. When he returned, weaker and quieter, something had shifted. He asked to speak with Ijoma privately. In his study, he gestured for her to sit. She hesitated. Servants did not sit before the master. "Sit," he said firmly. She sat on the chair's edge, hands folded. "You saved my life." "No, sir. The doctor saved your life." "You brought the doctor. You ran into a storm that could have killed you. Why?" Ijoma chose her words carefully. "Because it was the right thing to do, sir. A life is a life. It does not matter whose." Chief Okonkwo studied her face. "You are not like the others. You do not serve because you fear me. You serve because you believe in doing things right. That is rare. That is precious." He paused. "I have been unkind to you. My family has been unkind. I am sorry." Ijoma's eyes widened. She had never heard him apologize to anyone, certainly not a servant. "I want to offer you a new position. I am too weak to manage household accounts. I need someone I can trust, someone who will not steal. Will you do it?" Ijoma was stunned. "Sir, I do not have education in—" "You can read and write. You are honest. That is all I need." So Ijoma's role changed. She was still officially a maid, but now she also spent hours in the chief's study, managing expenses, reviewing receipts, keeping records. He began confiding in her about his businesses, his frustrations with lazy sons, his wife who cared only for status. Ijoma listened. She rarely offered advice, but when she did, it was thoughtful and grounded. Chief Okonkwo found himself trusting her more than his own family. This did not go unnoticed. Madame Madize made cutting remarks. "The maid thinks she is important now." The sons called her the beggar maid who forgot her place. Rumors spread among servants. Some said she was trying to seduce the chief. Others said she was stealing. The cook who once admired her now avoided her. Ijoma felt the isolation deeply but said nothing. She continued working with quiet dignity. "What would you have done if you found yourself suddenly elevated but also isolated? Would you have defended yourself or stayed silent like Ijoma?" Years continued. Chief Okonkwo's health never fully recovered. More heart attacks. He moved slowly, spent more time home, more time talking with Ijoma. One afternoon, organizing documents, he said something that made her hands freeze. "I am going to die soon, Ijoma. Please do not speak like that, sir. It is truth, and when I die, everything I built will be destroyed. My sons are fools. My wife cares only for appearances. They will fight over my wealth like dogs and waste it within 5 years." He stared out the window. "I have been thinking about my legacy, about what really matters. Money can be stolen, property sold, but integrity lasts. You have taught me that." Ijoma did not know what to say. "I want to do something. Something ensuring at least part of what I built is used properly. Something honoring the values I forgot until you reminded me." He did not elaborate, but Ijoma saw him writing late into nights, meeting lawyers privately, looking at her with an expression she could not read. Gratitude mixed with sadness, as if trying to fix something broken, knowing it might be too late. Then, on a quiet Tuesday morning, Chief Okechukwu Okonkwo died in his sleep. The household erupted. Madame Adaizi wailed dramatically for guests and cameras, though her eyes were dry. The sons made shows of grief, but were already discussing inheritance before their father's body cooled. The funeral was massive. Hundreds came, politicians and business associates. Ijoma stood at the back, unnoticed, tears streaming silently. She cried not for the powerful chief everyone else knew, but for the man who had sat with her and confessed regrets, who had treated her as human when his family did not. After burial, real ugliness began. The sons tore through his study like locusts, searching for documents, account numbers, deeds. They found his main will, leaving everything to them equally. They celebrated, but they also found references to other documents, meetings with unknown lawyers, unaccounted properties. Paranoia set in. Emeka accused Ijoma of stealing papers. She was always in his study. She poisoned his mind against us. They ransacked her room, throwing her belongings into dirt, searching for valuables. They found nothing except her mother's Bible, her father's watch, and the old photograph. Worthless. Cheek grabbed Ijoma's arm roughly. "You stole from us. I know you did. Get out before I have you arrested." Ijoma, for the first time in all her years there, looked him directly in the eyes. She did not shout or cry. She simply said, "I have stolen nothing. I have only ever served this family faithfully. Your father knew that. Perhaps one day you will too." Then she gathered her belongings, tucked her mother's Bible under her arm, and walked out of the Okonkwo estate for what everyone believed would be the last time. She had nowhere to go. She returned to Sister Mary at the church, who let her sleep in a storage room and helped her find work cleaning offices at night. Ijoma was 48 years old, starting over again. But she was not defeated. Because hidden inside her mother's Bible, pressed between pages of the Book of Ruth, was a folded document, a handwritten letter from Chief Okonkwo, and a copy of a deed. She had never opened it. The chief had given it to her a month before his death, saying only, "Keep this safe. When the time is right, you will know what to do." She did not read it because she trusted that when the time was right, she would understand. For now, she waited, and worked, and prayed. 5 years passed. Ijoma worked quietly, lived simply, saved what little she could. She heard news occasionally about the Okonkwo family. The stories were not good. The sons had fought over inheritance, splitting businesses and properties. Without their father's wisdom or proper management, everything crumbled. Companies went bankrupt. Properties were sold to cover debts. The grand estate fell into disrepair because they could not afford maintenance. Madame Adizi moved to a smaller house. The sons who had spent entire lives in wealth now faced the humiliation of poverty. Around this time, Ijoma finally opened the document the chief had given her. She sat in her small room one evening, carefully unfolding the paper. The letter was written in the chief's shaky but clear hand. "My dear Ijoma, if you are reading this, I am gone. I am sorry I could not protect you from my family's cruelty. But I hope this document will serve as proof of your faithfulness and my gratitude. I have placed the Okonkwo estate, the main house and surrounding land, in your name. You are the rightful owner. Not because of obligation, but because you earned it through years of loyalty, integrity, and grace. My sons will inherit my businesses and wealth, but the home, the place where I lived, where I learned what truly matters, that belongs to you. Use it wisely. Use it as you once dreamed, as a place where no one is turned away. Forgive them if you can. And forgive me for not being brave enough to tell you this while I lived." Ijoma sat in stunned silence, reading the letter repeatedly. Then she looked at the attached document, a legal deed, properly notarized, transferring ownership of the estate to Ijoma Nadi. It had been filed with the government registry years ago but kept confidential per the chief's instructions until after his death and after a 5-year waiting period. That period had just ended. Ijoma did not sleep that night. She prayed. She cried. She thought about everything she had endured. And she thought about what Chief Okonkwo had asked. Forgive them. The next morning, she saw a lawyer recommended by Sister Mary. He verified the document's authenticity, confirmed they were legally binding, and that the confidentiality period had expired. "Madam," the lawyer said, "you are the legal owner of one of the most valuable properties in this city. What do you want to do?" Ijoma thought about the question. What did she want? Revenge? She could have them thrown out the way they had thrown her out. Justice? She could watch them suffer as she had suffered. But then she remembered her mother's voice. The truth might hurt today, but lies will destroy you tomorrow. And she remembered her own childhood dream, a home where no one is ever turned away hungry. The lawyer arranged everything. He contacted the Okonkwo family, informing them of a legal meeting regarding the estate. The sons, desperate and confused, agreed, hoping perhaps to sell the property for debt relief. On the appointed day, they gathered in what had been their father's study. Chike, Emeka, and Dubum sat on one side of the table. Madame Adiz sat at the head, still trying to maintain dignity despite worn clothing and tired face. The lawyer sat across with his briefcase. Then the door opened, and Ijoma walked in. "What is she doing here?" Emeka demanded. "Get her out." The lawyer raised his hand. "Please sit. Miss Nadi is the reason for this meeting." "Miss Nadi?" Chike laughed bitterly. "That is the maid. Why are we—" "I am not here to waste your time," the lawyer interrupted coldly. "I am here to inform you of a legal matter concerning this property." He opened his briefcase and read the letter aloud. Every word, every sentence. The room grew quieter as the meaning became clear. When he finished, he placed the deed on the table. This estate, as of 5 years ago, became the legal property of Miss Ijoma Nadi. The transfer was made by your father before his death, and held in confidentiality until now, per his instructions. Miss Nadi is the owner of this property. You are currently residing here at her discretion. The silence was absolute. Madame Adese's face went white. Dubem's mouth hung open. Emeka stood so fast his chair fell backward. That is impossible. That is fraud. She manipulated him. Every document has been verified, the lawyer said calmly. Multiple legal experts reviewed this case. It is legitimate. Your father was of sound mind. Miss Nadi is the legal owner. Chiki, who had not spoken, stared at Ijoma in complete disbelief. You, all this time, you knew? No, Ijoma said quietly. I did not know. Your father gave me the documents but told me not to open them until the right time. I only learned the truth weeks ago. So what now? Madame Adese's voice was sharp with panic. You throw us out? Take everything like we took everything from you? The sons looked at her with hope, mixed with shame. This was the moment where Ijoma could choose who she wanted to be. She looked at them, really looked. She saw not cruel people who had tormented her, but broken people raised without values, taught that wealth made them superior, now facing consequences of that teaching. I do not want to throw you out, Ijoma said softly. The room stirred in surprise. Your father loved you, even though you disappointed him. He wanted you to learn something. He also trusted me to do something meaningful with this place. She paused. I am going to restore this estate. I am going to turn part of it into a home for widows and orphans, people who have nowhere else to go, people like I once was. But you may stay if you wish. There is room enough. On one condition, you help, you work, you contribute, not as masters, but as people learning to serve others. The sons looked at each other, stunned. Madame Adese covered her face. Why? Emeka asked, voice breaking. After everything we did, why? Ijoma's eyes filled with tears, but she smiled. Because your father gave me more than this house. He gave me a chance to be better than my circumstances, and I want to give you that same chance. I want you to learn what he learned, that wealth is not in what you own, but in what you give. That true power is not in ruling over others, but in serving them. I cannot force you to change, but I can offer you the opportunity. Could you have offered that kind of grace to people who had humiliated you for years? It was not immediate. The sons were angry at first, defensive, proud. Emeka left, saying he would never accept charity from a maid. But Chike and Dubem stayed, humbled and curious. Madame Adese stayed too, though she barely spoke for months, moving through the house like a ghost, wrestling with shame. Slowly, something remarkable happened. The estate was restored. Ijoma used savings and secured small loans for renovations. Chiki, once lazy and entitled, worked alongside contractors, learning skills he never needed before. Dubem began managing accounts honestly, discovering he had a mind for numbers when he actually applied it. Madame Adese, after months of silence, one day approached Ijoma and whispered, I am sorry. I am so sorry for how I treated you. It was the first genuine thing she had said in years. Ijoma embraced her, and they both wept. Emeka eventually returned a year later, humbled by failure and poverty outside. Ijoma welcomed him back without judgment. The estate became what the chief had perhaps always dreamed, a place of purpose. The doors were open. Widows from the city came to live in renovated quarters, given work and dignity. Orphaned children found shelter, education, and love. Ijoma moved into a modest room, no larger than what she had occupied as a servant. News of the transformation spread. The story of the maid who inherited a mansion and turned it into a sanctuary became legendary. Journalists came for interviews, but Ijoma refused most. She did not want fame. She simply wanted to fulfill a promise she had made as a girl, to create a home where no one was turned away. Years passed. The Okonkwo sons, once symbols of wasted privilege, became respected community members, known for their work at the estate and their changed hearts. Madame Adeze became a grandmother figure to the orphaned children, teaching them with gentleness she had never shown her own sons. And Ijoma, now elderly, would sit on the balcony evenings, watching children play in the courtyard, watching widows laugh together preparing meals, watching the sun set over the city. She would think of her parents, of the village, of the fire that took everything, of the years of humiliation, of Chief Okonkwo's kindness, and of the long journey that brought her here. She never regretted her choice to forgive. She never regretted offering grace instead of revenge. Because she understood something profound, holding on to bitterness would have made her a prisoner in the very house she now owned. Freedom came not from possession, but from release. Before she passed away at 73, Ijoma established a legal trust ensuring the estate would continue its mission forever. She left small portions to Chike, Dubem, and Emeka, not as inheritance, but as a reminder of the second chance they had been given. She left instructions that Madame Adeze be cared for until her death, and she left the bulk to the trust, managed by people chosen for integrity, not wealth. On her funeral day, streets were lined with people, not politicians or celebrities, but widows who had found refuge, orphans who had found family, community members who had witnessed transformation. The Okonkwo sons carried her casket, tears streaming, finally understanding the weight of what she had given them, not just forgiveness, but redemption. They buried her near her parents' village, beneath a tree like the one where her mother used to teach. The headstone was simple. Ijeoma Nadi. She served with love. She forgave with grace. She built a home for the lost. So let me ask you, what would you have done in Ijeoma's place? When the world gave you every reason to become bitter, every justification for revenge, would you have chosen grace? Ijeoma's story challenges us to examine something deeper. She understood that revenge might satisfy for a moment, but it chains you to your pain forever. When you make someone else's suffering your goal, you become defined by their actions rather than your own choices. Ijoma refused to let the cruelty she experienced determine who she would become. And in doing so, she broke a cycle that could have continued for generations. Her story teaches us that your character in obscurity determines your capacity in visibility. The person you are when no one is watching, when there is no reward, when there is no recognition, that is your true self. Ijoma was faithful with small things, and so she could be trusted with great things. She developed integrity in secret, and when the moment came for it to be revealed, she was ready. Character is not something you put on for special occasions. It is who you are in the mundane, exhausting, unrewarded moments of daily life. If this story has touched your heart, write in the comments, "Integrity never dies." And if you love stories like this, true tales of faith, loyalty, and destiny, make sure to subscribe and join our storytelling family. Because we are all writing our own stories with our daily choices. The question is not whether your story will be remembered, but whether it will be worth remembering. Ijoma chose grace. And because of that choice, her story lives on, not carved in marble, but inscribed in the hearts of everyone who heard it and decided to live differently. That is immortality. That is the mansion no one can ever take from you, the one you build inside yourself, one choice at a time, one act of integrity at a time, one moment of grace at a time. Thank you for watching, and may you have the courage to choose grace when your moment comes. I'd love to hear your stories, and if you're new here, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss more stories that will remind you that life is full of unexpected miracles if we're just brave enough to recognize them when they appear.